Are you struggling with Docker run commands and encountering frustrating volume errors? You're not alone. Today, we're diving into a common issue that many users face when using relative paths in Docker. I completely understand how annoying it can be when you think you have everything set up correctly, only to be met with an error message. It can feel like you're hitting a brick wall. But don't worry, we're here to break it down together. Let's take a look at the specific question that brought us here. One user asked how to convert volumes from a Docker compose file to a Docker run command. They provided their Docker commands and encountered an error about invalid characters in the local volume name. Sound familiar? Let's figure this out. So what's going on here? The error message indicates that Docker is having trouble with the relative path you're using for the volume. Docker requires absolute paths for volumes on Windows, especially when using Docker Toolbox. Let's clarify this further. Stay with me. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand how to fix this issue, but also gain insights into best practices for using Docker effectively. To resolve the volume error, the user should first change the relative path to an absolute path. This is necessary because Docker on Windows requires absolute paths for volume mounts. Next, the user needs to modify the Docker run command. Instead of using ./node.js, they should replace it with the absolute path they just determined. Additionally, the user should ensure that the second volume, which is /home/chat node modules, is correctly set up. This path is typically used to avoid issues with node modules being overwritten. Finally, the user can run the updated command in their terminal. This should resolve the error and allow the Docker container to start successfully. Fun fact, Docker was originally developed for Linux, which is why it can be a bit tricky on Windows. But with a few tweaks, you can make it work seamlessly. Now let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative solution provided by another user suggests modifying the Docker run command. Instead of using a relative path for the volume, they recommend using an absolute path. Specifically, replace /node.js with pwd/node.js. This change ensures that Docker can correctly locate the volume. That's all on that answer. Let's take a look at another one. An alternative solution provided by another user suggests using absolute paths for volumes in Docker on Windows. They recommend two formats for specifying the path. Here's a pro tip. Always use absolute paths when working with Docker on Windows. This will save you from a lot of headaches and errors in the future. And there you have it. You should now be able to run your Docker commands without any volume errors. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more Docker tips and tricks.